Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. We have the business renovator with us today. Welcome, Phil Jilks.
Hey, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I know we have only recently met, but the connection and the synergy we had in that conversation, I think we scheduled 20 minutes and went not quite 2 hours. It was quite a lengthy call. So I'm glad to be here.
Business renovator. Okay. Love it. Absolutely love it. And you allowed me to play coach with you just a little bit before we started recording, so I could extract out of you what that looks like. And I think it's going to lead into some really good questions, because we have an audience full of business people and all different types of businesses. But the one thing that we all have in common is we're all looking to grow. And there's always room for improvement, not only in our mindset, which is kind of the theme of this show, but we all have room to grow in our businesses as well. And the work that you do with your clients is coming at it from both the inner game and the outer game perspective. So before I start shooting off too many questions at you, I'd love for you to share with our audience a little bit about you and what your business is, so they know who they're going to be listening to for the next 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, if you look at my past, I don't count my years of life. I don't count my life by years anymore. I do it by decades because it's a smaller number, but you can do the math and figure it out. So my first stint as an entrepreneur was, I was probably, I don't know, 10, 8, 9 or 10, somewhere in there. And it was either a door-to-door sales guy selling chocolate bars for my sister. She didn't like selling. I love chocolate bars. So how do I eat them? Well, she said for every box I sold, I got a chocolate bar. So I got paid that commission that way. That was the first stint into it. And then my folks were blue collar workers. And when you asked them for money, they said they didn't have it. And all those other, they were raising 5 children. And they said, if you want to earn some money, you need to go and make it yourself. So again, I started a landscaping company. Now that sounds pretty romantic for most people. And where I live, a landscaping company could be cutting grass and doing things like that in the summer and then removing snow in the winter. So I've done both of those at a young age, knocking on the door, selling my services, and then delivering the services. I didn't get serious about entrepreneurialism, though, with a real business as a corporation until my 20s. And I got into the printing business, sold printing and managed the printing as an owner of a print shop, and realized that's not where I want to be. So then my path allowed me the opportunity to learn more about how we think, how the brain works in terms of creating our success. I had some wonderful mentors along the way, some on cassette. That's okay. I told you, we'll count my age by decades. And some in real life and amazing people. Some of the people that have mentored some of the people that are popular today. Bob Proctor, for one. One of his mentors was also a mentor of mine. And all of that stuff over that journey of working in a variety of different fields, like high-tech computers, of minis, all the way up to mainframes and client-server technology in between, automotives, selling cars, new and used, self-development with Dale Carnegie and the Pacific Institute. Worked with them indirectly with a Canadian company and helped provide cognitive psychology training. Only we did it in plain English because plain English is easier for most of us to understand. And then I started the company that I'm in now in the 90s, and it ended up becoming called in Canada, we can have a numbered company. So my company is a number, which is boring, doesn't mean anything. So it's operating. If you're writing me a check, you'd write it to PG2. So it's operating as PG2. It's really simple. But under that is the business renovator, and that's where we are today. So there's a whole bunch of different things in my journey in and around learning how to lead people, guide people, learning how to sell, how to go from feeling awkward and sleazy and selling is a terrible thing to something to be proud of, and realize we're in the business of serving, helping people get to another level. And so I've done all of that. And I thought, well, I really get a kick out of coaching and mentoring people, and whether they be athletes, hockey players, or football players. Now, the football players were at the university level, and so I've never played football, which is a good thing. I've not run everybody's business either, but I come from it from a different point of view. It's like a kaleidoscope. So we can help you shift the kaleidoscope. So when you're looking through it, you see an image, we can shift it a little bit. And that small incremental shift can make a massive, huge difference to you and your business and your life. And you can have your life back and get the business to do what you were hoping it was going to do. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to work with people that were willing to be coached, willing to do things that were uncomfortable, and we're open to constant and never-ending improvement. And if people are like that, that's kind of where I like to hang my hat and work with people, so that they get those blinding flashes of the obvious and advance to where it is they want to get to. Yeah, that's kind of a summation.
You said something that I have to dig deeper into.
Okay.
And that is about making those little shifts that they seem small, right? They seem like small little tweaks. And it could be a mindset shift. It could be an incremental shift in their business processes. Sometimes it can seem like something so small, but even a 1% shift in your direction over time can be significant. I love to talk a little bit more about that, because so many people make the mistake of thinking that they have to completely uproot things in their business, or they have to make a drastic life change. And that's not always the case. In fact, in many cases, you're not really that far off from your desired trajectory. Sometimes it is just a little shift in the way that you're thinking or the way that you're doing things, or, a slight improvement in this area or that area. And it doesn't have to be like this extreme thing. You want to talk on that a little bit?
I'm 1,000% behind you on that. Case in point is what are some of the largest, most successful brands in the auto industry currently, and have been for quite a while, from Japan. And when they first hit the market, I've never actually saw the Coke cans that they were made out of, but allegedly they were built out of Coke cans or pop cans or soda cans, right? Now they're leading, and they have been for many years, and eating up the market share. And one of the things that got them there was doing small incremental improvements and being able to make changes on the line instead of waiting till the car's finished. It's too late. The problem's in there. So I don't know if you've ever heard of buy a car that was built on a Monday versus a Friday, because the workers were looking at the weekend and not paying attention to the manufacturing process. Is that true? I have no idea. It's just hearsay, but it kind of makes sense when you look at the results. What's happening in the world today is that the Japanese and other countries have done a stellar job in doing the small incremental improvements on a regular basis that have massive gains. And the massive gains is loyalty with their team, product that we buy, that we like and love. People went from many decades ago, I'm never buying Japanese, to I'll only buy Japanese. How does that happen? Small incremental improvements on a regular basis. Not saying that they build anything perfectly, but I think it supports your idea of the slight shifts. And that's one of the best examples I know of. And working with my clients, I've helped them have that kaleidoscope moment that we were talking about earlier, shifting just a little bit on a consistent basis, not shifting and sticking, but shifting and doing it on a regular basis, then adding something else as a small incremental improvement in another area of their business. And I've heard that the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. Well, compound activity works the same sort of way. And if you've done it this way this year, if you've had an increase of, I don't know, $50,000 a month or a year, depending on the size of your business, and you continue to do that every year and improve, that $50,000 savings is every year. There's an example of a client of mine in Houston we worked with, and they were in the HVAC space. And a lot of the time they know some of the things they need to do. They just need to have somebody hold their feet to the fire or help them stay accountable. And sometimes they don't know what they need to do. This particular individual knew what he needed to do, and he needed to put into play an inventory system. Reason being is that they'd order parts and pieces for their air conditioning units and heating systems, and they might need a motor or something, and they didn't have it inventoried or put in the right spot or didn't know where it was. So instead of wasting a ton of time looking for it, finding it, even if they weren't even sure if they had it or not, they go buy another piece of equipment, another motor. It means their money's tied up in two, and when they get profit on, the other one's still hanging out there, not being used. So by having an inventory system, and he implemented it in less than 90 days. And once he had it completed, we asked him, so what kind of impact did this have to you from a dollars and cents sort of point of view? And he said about 50 grand. So that's 50 grand a year. He's ahead of things. What else could he do? 50,000 here, 50,000 there, 20,000 here, add it all up. Next thing you know, you've got an additional $250,000 in your jeans.
That puts it into perspective. I think that we all could probably make a few simple tweaks in our businesses right now that could have that type of significant return for us. So when somebody is in a situation and they don't know what to do, how do they even find those areas?
Well, if they continue to do it by themselves, I have no idea, because change won't happen unless somebody changes the way they're thinking and what they're focusing on, right? So it starts with a mindset. They need to be open to possibilities. They need to be receptive to the possibility that their business could use an improvement of some sort, even if they don't know where that is, or even if they think they know where that is. That's a great starting point. Often I've heard, and my peers have heard the same thing, is everybody, air quotes everybody, is not everybody, but a large population want to make more money, more sales, more revenue. However, if you don't have the infrastructure to support that, you can put yourself out of business really quick. But if we show up and help people in the areas that they want to work on, then we can develop the trust, find and understand their business better, see it from a viewpoint from outside of their business, outside of their profession, and give them some strategies and tactics that they can try in their business a little bit at a time. I've worked with chiropractors. I'm not a doctor. How could I do that? Because I come to their business with a different point of view. I sometimes ask the questions that are so simple and so rudimentary that they just don't even think about asking themselves that. So it's giving them that new, fresh look. And I don't have the emotional attachment to their business that they do. So I'm coming outside with no emotional connection other than wanting to make sure that they get what they wanted to get out of our relationship.
There were a couple takeaways in there. So
Yeah.
Before we let anybody off the hook without really internalizing some of the gold in there, the first thing you said was mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Now, every one of us has had this experience where we are fixated on a problem and we don't see the solution. And once we sort of emotionally let go of our grip on the problem, we kind of soften up a little bit, then we realize that the solution to the problem was right there all along.
Mm-hmm.
So the mindset piece is huge. And oftentimes the right next step is already in our reality somewhere. And it's almost like a blind spot until we pull our head out of our problem and we can then be more open to a solution.
When you say it's almost like a blind spot, no, it's not. It is a blind.
It is a blind spot.
Yeah, there's these things we have that I've learned called scotomas, which is a Greek word for blind spot. So we're walking around like this. We'd act not in accordance as the truth is, but as we perceive it to be. So if we, in our business, and we got our head down and butt up, and we can't see the tree for the forest and all those other cliches, the reality is we can't, because this is what we're focusing on. All we see is the problem, not the possibility. So what a coach can do is help these things open up. And just to your point, the answer is right there. I just couldn't, all I had to do is this. Oh, look right there. Sometimes it can be that simple. So it's a blinding flash of the obvious, but it's not so obvious. It's like that crazy commercial with Captain Obvious on it. Right.
I've got to play mindset coach for just a minute here, because this is an interesting phenomenon that I've seen over the many years that I've worked with clients. Sometimes we do see the solution and we don't want to accept it because of unaddressed, unresolved fears, doubts, and insecurities. That takes me back to when I had my general hypnotherapy practice. And I always love to use stories from that because they're so just our everyday BS that we do to ourselves. And I remember I had a client that was working with me for weight loss. Super, super smart executive woman, doing well for herself financially, and really struggling with weight. And it would come up in our sessions, Weight Watchers. She was bringing it up. I was not bringing it up, but it kept coming up in all of her resistance. She didn't want that type of structure, and she didn't want it felt too confining and all of these things. Now, mind you that at that point, I was a general hypnotherapist. So my role is to do the little hypnosis thing and, work with her subconscious mind on seeing and feeling herself as the thinner, healthier version of herself, and, releasing the emotional attachments to eating. So I wasn't really playing coach in those days.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so interesting because when we were able to finally address her fear and her resistance, and she was able to release and let that go, she joined Weight Watchers and started losing weight. So in business, we do have that same tendency, I've noticed with my clients in the capacity that I work with people in now on their mindset and getting out of their own way, is sometimes we do have the solution right in front of us, whether it is overcoming your fear of public speaking and leveraging speaking as a marketing tool to grow your business, or any number of different things. And it's so funny later in retrospect, after you look at it objectively and you say to yourself, man, if I would have just gotten out of my own way on that thing years ago, how much further along could I be? And that's the mindset piece that we're talking about.
Oh, absolutely it is. And again, going to the same place where I was introduced to scotomas and acting not in accordance to the truth as it is, but how we perceive it to be. He also talked about, we have this thing called a self-image, or our isness. So an example that we were taught back then was if you were a woman and you were in an abusive relationship, or if you're an alcoholic and you're really good at both, we don't want to shift from those because that's what we're comfortable with. That's how we identify. That's who we think we is at the deepest level of our habitual thinking. So that's true for all of us, not to that extremity. some can break through and push through things quicker than others, but all of us have some kind of, it's a protection mechanism, because our isness job, or our creative subconscious role, is to keep us as we is. So if we're trying to change our current reality as how we perceive ourselves to be, and we want to be this person out here who's making a lot more money, working a lot less, has a big team, whatever that vision is, doesn't matter to me. We tend to look back and get sold by our habitual thinking to stick where we is. That's why I really love the name The Business Renovator, is because what we're all about is helping people renovate themselves and their business. And if they don't change themselves, the business won't change either, because a business is an expression of the person who's inside the business. So there's the inside reality and the outside perception of the business. And we try to, well, we don't, did I say try? We work with our clients to have them be the same, so that when people show up to their businesses, the experience has congruency to it. And as a result of that, the stress levels of being an entrepreneur and successful business owner are diminished. And the happier customer, raving fan experience is accelerated.
Love that. All right. I'm gonna pivot this a bit. Now, you have shared with us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. And I'm curious if there's something that you feel inspired to share with us about your own mindset journey as an entrepreneur, and if maybe there's something that you personally struggled with and had to break through in order to get to where you are.
No, didn't have anything. Well, I wish that was, I was going to say, I wish that was true, but I don't, because it's the journey, not the destination, that's most important. Going back to when I was thinking about selling my interest in the print shop, and people had started to say to me, hey, Phil, have you ever thought of getting into sales full time? Which is kind of where my mind was going, without telling too many people at the time, because who am I to do that? Right? I was under valuing my potential. Anyway, regardless, I was able to move forward. So my very first stab at being a speaker, I joined a Toastmasters club, because the mentor back then said, you need to buy these two things, 2 cassettes. One was by a fellow by the name of McFarlane. It was about speaking and how to present, so cassettes. And the other one was about the art of selling, which was J. Douglas Edwards. And those were easy to do because I could just listen. The other thing that was prescribed was to join a Toastmasters group. So I did, because this guy was wiser and smarter than me, and I wanted to learn and grow and improve. So I joined the Toastmasters. I wish I had have known you were going to ask this question, because I would have shown you a picture of what I looked like as a younger man. You have parted hair in the middle, so did I. My hair was not quite as long as yours, but pretty close. And I didn't like wearing ties, didn't like authority, even though I was in authority, and rarely did I wear socks in my shoes, for whatever reason. So I go, and the reason this is important, I show up at this Toastmasters meeting. They've got linen tablecloths on the table, and most of them are professionals, engineers, geologists, and entrepreneurs owning successful businesses in the city I'm in. And so I hung out with them in my crazy attire, long hair, no socks, and all that kind of stuff. And it took me forever to do an icebreaker, but I finally got the courage to do it. And I can't remember exactly what made me do it, what inspired me to do it. I know now how I could have done that a lot easier, but I didn't know that back then. And so I did the icebreaker, and it went pretty good. And they were really supportive. They were always supportive, these guys. And I did the icebreaker. And then what they did as a club is they took the summer off. And they come back in the fall. Well, I never went back. I was so afraid of public speaking. But not anymore. I've spoken on in 3 countries internationally. So from being totally paranoid with fear and anxiety to being able to be in front of a room of people, shared the stage with people like Brian Tracy, and facilitated a workshop to my peers of business coaches in San Diego. So yeah, that's kind of where I was at a younger age. But if you persist and focus on what you want and really knowing why you want it, you can become a lot more. So that's another mantra that I have for one of my mentors and teachers along the way is deciding what it is you want and why you want it, and stifle out, and really have a burning desire to the end result you're attempting to grow into. And you don't always get everything you want, but just think of who you become because you've taken that on. So that's what I help my clients do. I have a client who, not a client anymore, but when I worked with her, she was a single mom, 3 kids, well, one pair of twins and another one, and running an accounting practice in the city I'm in. And she doesn't like winters. And her big, hairy, audacious goal was to be able to grow her practice, accounting practice, and live half the year in a tropical place. And we worked together for about 8 months, and she did that. She's living in Mexico, and she has been there for a long time. Now she's living there full time. But when we first started, it was a wish. And she, well, how can I do that? And if you know what you want and why you want it, stifle the how, you can invent anything. Was it the biggest growth in business? No, but it was growth in her and her practice, and only working with clients that really appreciated her. So she got rid of people that took her energy away, got to live in a place where she wanted to live, and she's raising her kids. And that's one of my favorite success stories. She did all the work. I just was there to help guide her a little bit.
I love stories like that. A lot of people can relate to having kind of that wishful thinking goal.
Right.
But it's not until you start to believe that it's possible that you're even willing to take the steps to move in the direction of achieving that goal. Now, I always say, mindset really is the foundation for success in life and business. Because if you don't have that level of belief, that level of faith, the right thinking, the right mentors, the right support, you'll never do what you need to do to create the results that you want. So, sometimes people think mindset is just like some law of attraction stuff, right? Think it and vibrate it, and then it's just going to fall in your lap.
Yeah.
And what we're really talking about here is your attitude, having that type of commitment, right? That obsessive burning desire, that's the inner game. And then that is followed up by all of the action steps. So it's not that your vibration and the law of attraction doesn't matter. It absolutely does, but it's only one piece of the success formula.
I smiled when you said something. I've created a new branding for me because every once in a while I'll forget what it is. The message I'm trying. I get dyslexic. I'm not really, but I sometimes get things muddled up. And I had this epiphany. I mean, I'm actually in the BS business and proud of it. And it's not the typical BS you're thinking of. It's belief to get to see it. You don't see it before you believe it. If you can't believe it, you won't see it. So that helps me help other people to focus on really buying into it and believing it in your soul. Because if you don't have that burning desire, it's really hard to move things. And I've had experiences where I've had a red hot burning desire, or even white hot, and I'm unstoppable. Doesn't mean I always get where I'm trying to get to, but I'm a lot further than where I was before. But quite often I do. I also have a software company that specializes in the oil and gas sector that does directional drilling. And when I first came across it, I didn't even know you could bend pipe. And we have clients in several countries around the world. And that all came out of, if you know what you want and why you want it, and stifle the how. So taking Steve Jobs talks about joining the dots, looking backwards. So when I do the looking backwards, before I found my partner to because I'm not a coder. I can't even sit long enough to do that and even think about it. But I did know that the software, if we didn't change it from running in XP, the life of it would be over. And why was that important? Well, the fellow I acquired it from was a beautiful man, but he was taken from us way too young. He called me from New Orleans one time. He said, yeah, I survived the hurricane and the trade show went off without a hitch. He says, and I called my doctor. He says, I'm having trouble keeping some food down, but don't fix me too soon. So anyway, he was making light of a serious situation. I don't know how serious it was until he got back home. And he ended up having colon cancer. They did an operation to take that section out, and he got a staph infection, and that infection took his life. Well, he was the originator of the software, and I met this guy through a networking process, and not getting into the whole story, but he was a wonderful guy. So I wanted his product, his legacy to live on. And knowing what I know about software, you can run out of money, and you can run out of run out of money and run out of time. But the money was a big one, because if you run out of money, then whoever's doing the programming for you has an asset that you have no access to. All of your money's tied up in it, and you have no more money to get it out. So I thought, how can I creatively and innovatively solve my what and why? I needed somebody that would develop the software as if it was their own, and as if it was Randy that had written it. And I found that guy. It didn't happen overnight. It took me about 4 years. But I found that guy, and we were able to rewrite. He rewrote the whole thing after looking at the original source code, and rewrote it, made it a little bit better. And it's been so stable. And so if you know what you want and why you want it, things can happen.
Powerful. A lot of people talk about the why. Why do you want it? Why do you want it? Not as many people talk about the what, but you need both.
Yeah,
And I think even the bigger piece, the piece that the majority of people trip up on constantly, is the how. And it is, sometimes people confuse the how with the why, I think. And they're different.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So, Phil, can you share with our listeners, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, I guess the simplest one is an email address. You could go to phil@coachphil.ca. Shoot me a note, say where you found out about me on your wonderful show, and we can have a conversation from there. Or then go to my website. It's almost the same. It's just coachphil.ca. And I picked that because it's easier than the longer version, what it is. So that's, and I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn under Phil Jilks. You'll find me there, not under Coach Phil, but I'm there under my personal name.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Phil. This has been a great conversation full of little golden nuggets. So I'm really hoping that we have planted a couple of seeds in some subconscious minds, and people can really take away a few of those nuggets, or allow those seeds to germinate, because there's transformation within them for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I was just thinking through my mind, because that's where I always think. It's funny how we preface things like that. If they reach out and ask for the 100 Success Method, I will send them a document on how they can help break through their limiting beliefs in a simple sort of non-threatening sort of way.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this. You're a gracious host.
Now, of course, I have to thank our listeners. If you haven't already subscribed, please make sure you do so. So many great episodes. Listen to the ones that are already posted, and make sure you subscribe and listen to all the new ones coming. So much great content. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.